Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, September the 1st, 2021. It is currently 3:21 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. And I've been sitting in this sanctuary now for about 35 minutes, maybe close to 40 minutes. And the reason I wasn't going live during that 35, 40-minute period is because I got here, I got everything set up, and I started seeing some notifications on my iPad. And I started looking at all of these notifications, and I'm like, wait, what is going on? Okay, is this true? Is this accurate? And I kept looking, and I'm like, well, it appears to be true, and we have video/audio to prove it. Now, what you do with this information, it seems, I did a lot of reading over the last 30 to 40 minutes. It seems that people's reaction to the information that I'm about to present to you is basically broken into two camps. And it goes something like this. If you are a John MacArthur supporter, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't mean anything. It's no big deal. Just ignore it. If you are a John MacArthur, you disagree with John MacArthur, you don't agree with a number of things. In other words, you're not a John MacArthur supporter, then this is an absolutely huge deal. It is horrible. It's sinful. It's wrong. He should be disqualified from ministry. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. I mean, it just... Each side, it's either like, no, there's nothing to see here, move on. The other side, no, this is the biggest thing in the history of Christianity. And so we know that most likely, this is how it typically works. The truth is somewhere in the middle. But what I'm going to try to do here is just try to present the facts to the best of my ability, and then try to let you try to figure out how you think you should approach this. Part of me doesn't even want to talk about this. Part of me didn't even want to go live, but we covered a lot of this controversy, the end of last year, the beginning of this year. We talked about a lot of the controversy surrounding John MacArthur, Grace Community Church, COVID, how MacArthur started really, he kind of like, we need to shut down, we need to follow the rules, to no, basically we don't need to follow the rules, and COVID, there is no pandemic, and all of the things that I'm just paraphrasing a lot of things he said, but you can go back and look at all of this. Hey, in other words, his entire opinion and perspective changed dramatically. And then John MacArthur's church, Grace Community, got into basically a lawsuit with the county there in California, which that lawsuit's about to be settled. It looks like the county's going to be paying out a lot of money. I don't think the money, it appears the money will not be going directly to the church, but to the people who provided their legal defense fund. Now, because they got into a lawsuit and an argument with the county about COVID restrictions, many people saw MacArthur as the hero in the story, the one defending religious freedom. And so we have to go with John MacArthur. Others were like, wait a minute, this seems irresponsible. This doesn't seem right. This seems to be putting people's lives at risk. There's a problem. And so again, people have been divided over this story pretty much from the beginning. There's just been arguments and fighting, which isn't that the story of the entire pandemic as far as the church is concerned. It just seems like the church has been very split on what should and shouldn't be done. There you have those within the church who believes all the COVID basically is a hoax. It's all a conspiracy. It's all made up. It's not serious. Don't believe the death numbers. Don't believe the number of cases. Don't believe that hospitals are being filled. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. You have others who believe it's serious and that things need to be done. You've got people in the middle. Basically, you've got so many different factions when it comes to COVID and the church that it's sad that a pandemic, and I want you to just think of it this way, because this is the way I continue to think about it, and it's just absolutely, to me, it's heartbreaking, discouraging, and depressing. The world faces a pandemic. All right, where millions of people have died. Now, you may want to argue that you don't believe the numbers, but it's reported that millions of people have died. So we are facing a pandemic. And what should the church do? Well, it appears that what the church should do, it didn't do. Because what the church has done is simply become a divided, fractured, yelling match between different factions and different groups of people who can't agree and accuse this and accuse that and throw out this accusation and throw out this misinformation, misquoting statistics, misquoting information. And it's sad to watch the bride of Christ just completely fracture into a million factions and everyone yelling and screaming about a pandemic instead of saying, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic. How can we stay focused on the Word of God? How can we stay focused on ministering to people? How can we, what can we do to equip Christians? What can we do to be a voice that will point people to Scripture and to Christ and to salvation in the midst of a pandemic? But no, it turned into politics and fighting and arguing and don't wear a mask, wear a mask. If you wear a mask in my church, we're going to ask you to leave. Just shutting down, don't shut down, just never ending arguments. And so it's kind of just sad to see that the church, in many cases, did not handle the pandemic any better than the world. The world became divided. The world became fractured. The world broke into many different factions, everyone yelling and screaming. And a lot of the division in the world is between Republican and Democrat, between conservative and liberal, and many of the divisions in the church over the pandemic, sadly, almost follow some of those same lines. And since when should the church be like the world? It shouldn't be, but that's what happened. And I will argue that it's because the spiritual state of the church made it vulnerable, to becoming completely distracted and fractured because of something like COVID, instead of all pulling together and focusing on the Word of God. It's just the whole thing has just made me so angry. And whenever you try to talk about anything related to COVID, just watch what happens. I mean, boom, your email fills up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I say. No matter what I say in regards to COVID, I'm going to have 50% of my listeners disagreeing. That's just how fractured the church is right now. You can't talk about it. You can't offer anything reasonable or meaningful. If I state any information, if I quote any statistical facts, immediately someone will say, I don't believe those facts. I don't believe those facts. I don't believe those statistics. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. I can't trust the doctors. I can't trust the pharmaceutical companies. I can't trust the CDC. I can't trust anybody. But everyone who emails me about all the people they can't trust, they all have sources they trust. Right? They have a podcast or a YouTube video, or they trust themselves. It's just, the whole thing is just crazy. But MacArthur has been at the forefront in many cases of this as a church taking a stand against the county, against the government. They're going to meet in person. They're not going to wear masks. People can wear masks if they want to, but no mask mandate. And they're going to meet together, no social distancing. They're not going to do any of that. And that their church has flourished, grown in number. It's amazing. MacArthur's the hero and everything's wonderful. But let's remind ourselves of a very important fact. First, there was a drastic change from what MacArthur did say and then how he changed his view dramatically. We've already documented that in past episodes. And then there was a period of time that a lot of things were going, wait a minute. There are reports that people in the church have COVID. There are reports that someone in the church has died. There are reports that there's a COVID outbreak. And then MacArthur went missing. I can't remember if it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I've heard 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I can't remember. I'd have to go back. And we were told that he's resting. He's preparing for the Shepherds Conference. And if you remember, everybody was like, preparing for the Shepherds Conference? So he's going to miss a church on Sunday because he's preparing for the Shepherds Conference. This is like December, January, and the Shepherds Conference happens in like March. Like, wait, what? That there was a lot of questions about something doesn't make any sense, but you were basically told, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. There's no COVID. Everything's good. There's no pandemic. Everything's fine. MacArthur's okay. And there was a lot of just straight up denials and being told things that it wasn't COVID. Well, lo and behold, it appears it was COVID. Not only did MacArthur have it, it sounds like his wife had it, and it sounds like now MacArthur is acknowledging that it went through the church. These are now admissions that before you were met with absolute denial. So why all of a sudden now is this admission coming forth? Now, it's in part because the lawsuit with the county is about to be resolved. I think on Monday or Tuesday, there's going to be a payout. I think the money's going to go to the defense team. Supposedly it's not going to the church. And so I guess now you can just admit what was being denied in the past. Is that not deception? Is that not lying? I mean, these are reasonable questions. Like if you go back and listen to what was said in the past, and now you're saying this, the two don't match up. Now, I've heard the MacArthur supporters going, it's no big deal, it's fine. Sometimes you got to do that when you're dealing with an oppressive government. So basically, if the government's oppressive, it's okay for Christians to they justify basically lying and deception, I guess. I don't know. It's to me crazy. Even a few pro-MacArthur sites have even called the admission shocking. I think at least one pro-MacArthur site was like, this is pretty shocking. So I just want you to hear this. I'm going to play the audio where MacArthur acknowledges some of these things. I have one news report where they're kind of like, wait a minute here. What's going on? Some are saying, well, wait a minute. Maybe the county's going to come back and go, hey, wait, you hid all of this. You didn't reveal any of this. So is it going to now stop the settlement? I don't know if anything's actually going to happen. Maybe the county is just ready to be done with this and ready to move on. I know, put it this way, whatever. This is going to be basically nothing more than a little ripple in a pond. It's not going to actually, I don't think it's going to become anything major because the MacArthur supporters are the MacArthur supporters. So it doesn't matter what's going to happen. They're going to continue to support him and nothing's going to happen. And instead of just, I don't know, the whole thing is bizarre. But I'm just going to play this for you. But that's where you'll at least hear it. And then you're going to hear lots of probably, depending on the circles you run in, maybe on social media, you may see some posts, you may see a few things. I just want you to kind of know what's going on. And I'm not really going to try to be dogmatic one way or the other. You can draw your own conclusion. I'm not involved in that world, so they can do whatever they want to do. And, that also comes down to the autonomy of if the local church is autonomous, well, then they can do what they want. I guess you can sit there and you can condemn it. Who knows? Everyone's going to have an opinion. Just make sure you don't yell at me. All right. Don't yell at me. I didn't create this situation, right? I wasn't the one standing behind the pulpit at Grace Community Church and giving announcements on Twitter or wherever, basically saying, hey, no outbreak, there's nothing going on here. And then now all of a sudden saying, well, okay, there was an outbreak and wait, MacArthur did have it. Okay, I wasn't the one who created that situation. They created that situation. Now, you can consider it perfectly okay, fine. No need to prove that to me. You can believe it's completely wrong, fine. No need to prove that to me. I just want you to know what's going on. We talked about it in the past, so I kind of want to bring this coverage to conclusion and just lay it before you, and you can decide what you want to do with it. Here we go.
Before we look together to the Word of God and our study of Ephesians chapter 2, there are just a couple of things that I want to say to you that I hope will be somewhat helpful for you. First of all, there is a notice in the Grace Today about a Theotech conference, and it says September 11th. That's been postponed till October 30th. So if you want more information on that, you can go to the website of the Masters University, but it's been postponed till October 30th. I know that many of you, if not most of you, have been exposed to the media talking about the settlement of the lawsuit between our church and the county. I don't know what you've read or haven't read, but I do want to make a few comments on that. It appears from what we are reading, like you're reading, that this lawsuit is going in our favor, and we're deeply grateful for that. We've been getting those kinds of signals for the last number of weeks, and what has come recently is the city itself put on the agenda for this coming Tuesday night the resolution of this lawsuit, and that's what the media picked up. But I do want to correct a few things. First of all, there were statements made there about outbreaks and deaths and things like that, there is no evidence that can be traced back to Grace Church in those situations.
Okay, so he's getting ready to admit some things, but he starts off by saying that there's no way to prove that any of the outbreaks or deaths are linked to Grace Community Church. Now that's the statement. Now, you got to kind of follow the train of thought here, because at times it's hard, like, wait a minute. Well, how would you know if it was linked or not linked if you were not reporting that anyone had it? Like, if you're not reporting it and if you're not letting anyone know, then how can you trace it? How can you, like, okay, listen, everyone, we have one person in the church who has tested positive for COVID. They were here last Sunday. All right. So we need to now stop in-person services, and everyone needs to if you were near this person or around this person, like, you've got to give some kind of information. But if no reporting was happening and no one knew, then how can you dogmatically say, hey, it wasn't none of the outbreaks or deaths are traced back to Grace? Well, there's no way to trace it back to Grace if there wasn't any reporting being done. So that's a little like, hey, we're not going to report anything. We're not going to look at any information. But if anyone gets sick of COVID and dies, well, then clearly it wasn't this church, because we're not going to trace it down to find out if they possibly got it here. I mean, you've got to, if you're not following it, I don't know how you can be dogmatic about that. But I guess that then removes you from any legal responsibility, I guess. I don't know.
So we understand that obviously many people contracted COVID. We understand that. It probably went through our church in...
Okay. You're going to follow this. So none of it can be traced back to Grace Community Church. No outbreaks, no deaths. But then he's going to turn around and say, many of you contracted it, right? But, and it went through the church. Well, if it went through the church, but nobody in the church got it from anyone else in the church or at church, how would you know that? I want to back that up just a little bit. It just seems this is what's confusing a lot of people. It's like, wait, what is going on here?
And that obviously many people contracted COVID. We understand that. It probably went through our church in maybe December, January. That's when I began to realize how many people were ill.
December and January is when MacArthur began to realize how many people were ill. So that was people in the church. Or is he talking about that's when he began to realize how many people were ill outside of the church? Well, he just talked about it going through the church. But he says that none of it can be traced back to the church. I'm just trying to follow what actually happened. And if so many people were sick then how come back in December and January, it was like, hush, 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 hush. No COVID here, no COVID here, no pandemic, nothing to see. Well, now all of a sudden in August, you're like, well, it went through the church, and I realized in December and January how many people were ill. How many people were ill? Do you have a number? Were you keeping track? And did you report it? Because my understanding is this. You can tell me if I'm wrong. My understanding is this: the Los Angeles County Health Order requires places of worship to report to public health when at least 3 COVID-19 cases are identified among church staff or congregants within a 2-week period, regardless of where people caught the disease. So you're supposed to report, if 3 people in your church end up with it, staff or people in the congregation, you were to report it. Doesn't matter where they got it. Well, then was he reporting it? And if he was reporting it to them, why was there seeming to be like a shh, We don't talk about that. Why was there seeming to be like a denial and a silencing of anyone trying to figure out what's going on there at Grace Community Church? I mean, these are the questions that you're like, wait a minute. So, let me make it very clear. You may 1,000% support their decision not to shut down. You may support their decision 1,000% to go to basically end up in a lawsuit, with the county there in California. You may agree with them not shutting down, not masking, not social distancing. You may agree with all of that. But I think we all have to agree, okay, you may do all of those things, but are you not still required, honesty, truthfulness? Why would you not, once you realize a lot of people are getting sick, not then be very public about, wait a minute here, we've got to be careful here. We have a situation developing. You don't tell anyone? Are you not then putting people at risk? I mean, don't you have to isn't it a pastor's job to do some kind of protection of the people? Especially once you realize that there's an outbreak. There was an outbreak. And in December and January, he began to realize how many people. He doesn't tell us how many people. Did they keep track? And if they knew, why are they admitting it in August? And why didn't they come forward in December and January? See, there's a lot here that just is troubling.
That's when Patricia and I enjoyed our own bout with COVID.
There you go. Him and Patricia then had their own bout of COVID. So he acknowledges he had it. Now, that would have to explain then his absences. When we were told that he's resting, when we were told that he was preparing for the Shepherds Conference. No, he was homesick with COVID. Why would you not? Why? If you say something completely opposite of what is true, like, is that a big deal? What I find interesting, this is the way it works in Christianity. This is the way it works in the church. There are some sins, big time. Other sins, not so big. Like there's a time lying is a big deal. And then there's other times lying is not a big deal. Not lie. If he was lying about some other things, people would be like, that's the end. But he's lying about that. There was some misrepresentation, lying, deception. I don't know what you want to call it, but let's say for argument's sake, it's a lie. People don't care that it's a lie in regards to possibly COVID. But if it was a lie about something else, then it would be a big deal. So is it that lying is wrong, or is it lying only wrong when you're lying about a certain thing? See, I think Christians pick and choose when we want to get upset and we want to get outraged. It's only, no. He didn't do this. Now, there's a list of sins that if he would have committed on that list, then it would be a big deal. But if he doesn't commit the sins on that list, then any other, deviation, failure, it's acceptable. We have our mortal and venial list. I've always said it. It's the way it works in the church. And any denial of that is just a lie. You've got the big ones. Don't do those. Others, it's okay. We'll just look the other way. It's okay. Hey, maybe we weren't as forthcoming the way we should have been. Maybe we misrepresented. Maybe it was a straight up lie. But it's okay. It's about COVID. Nobody cares.
For about a week and a half, and we were fine, and we're thankful for that. So the Lord has protected us through this, and I just want you to know that I'm not trying to be a doctor, but I do believe that God has designed us to be able to live in a world of viruses, and that the best way to do that is to live together so that we build up our immune systems, and that's what started.
Okay, so now I'm not going to be a doctor, but I'm going to be one. I believe that the best way to deal with a pandemic is to be together so then our bodies can build up its immunity. That's the medical opinion of a non-doctor called John MacArthur. The best thing to do, guys, is everyone come together, everyone get COVID, and then boom, you'll build up natural immunity. Now, yes, there's been lots of discussion about natural immunity. How well does natural immunity protect you? But here's the thing. What if you have 50 people and you say, let's all get together so we can build up our natural immunity, and you lose 10 of them? Is it like, survival of the fittest, evolution? Is that the way we look at it from a spiritual standpoint? And you know what? If you want to do it that way, then should not everyone be, informed about what's going on? Hey, we're going to meet at the church. There is a COVID outbreak. We want you to know, though, that we think it's best that we all come together so we can build up our natural immunity. Wouldn't it be the right thing to do to inform everyone of that instead of telling everyone that MacArthur was out because of resting or preparing for the Shepherds Conference? He's out because he has COVID. And that there's a COVID outbreak going on in the church right now. So feel free to come on in because we think it's best. I got no problem if you want to do that. Just be straight up honest with it. Hey, we think natural immunity is the way to go. And so we have a COVID outbreak, but we're not going to stop services. But see, if they would have came out publicly and said all of that, I bet you things would have went very different with their lawsuit with the county. But they kept that all quiet. I mean, why else wouldn't you just come out? If that's your theory, if that's your belief, if that's the philosophy you're operating from, hey, we've got a COVID outbreak, we need everyone at church tonight, everyone, because there's a good chance you could get it and then you could build up your natural immunity. That's the way to go. Now, I'm not here to argue with you. If that's the way you want to do it, then that's the way you want to do it. Just don't spread it to someone else who may not agree with your philosophy, okay? That's kind of public health. That's the whole thing with a pandemic. It's not just you, it's the people you possibly infect. I still don't understand how people don't get that. People are like, well, I can do what I want. Fine. Do what you want. Don't impact anybody else. It's like in a public school, elementary classroom. If there's one child who has, say, a peanut allergy, usually a letter goes out to all the parents. Make sure your kids do not bring anything, any candy, any snacks of any kind into the classroom that contains peanuts because we have one child here who has a peanut allergy. Why would they do that? Right? Why? Because you've got to, sometimes it's not just about you. Sometimes it's about other people. Why did we pass laws about smoking in certain areas? Because it's not just about you. It's about how other people who choose not to smoke are breathing in your secondhand smoke and possibly cancer and all the other things. So the thing is, if that's what you want to do, fine. But you've got to let everyone know, hey, I had COVID. I was out. But we think the church should continue on. Did you inform everyone of that? It's that simple. If you didn't inform and you either hid it, misrepresented, or just gave out an absolute false reason, I'm sorry, that's problematic. And he missed about 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks. He says a week and a half. That would probably account for 2 weeks of missing. Right? Now, maybe they can come out and show that when he missed, he didn't have COVID. So that means he came to the church with COVID and preached. So either he was out with COVID. So, I mean, one way or the other, this looks bad. I had COVID, but I came to church and preached anyway. All right? And we didn't tell anyone. Or I was out with COVID and we didn't tell anyone and we gave other reasons. Either he showed up to the church with it or he missed because he had it and they didn't bother to tell anyone that he did. Why wouldn't they tell everyone? Why wouldn't that just have been public knowledge?
To come out in the media at this particular point, and those people who are isolated.
I'm going to back this up just a second so that we can hear all of this again. Here we go.
COVID for about a week and a half, and we were fine, and we're thankful for that. So the Lord has protected us through this, and I just want you to know that I'm not trying to be a doctor, but I do believe that God has designed us to be able to live in a world of viruses, and that the best way to do that is to live together so that we build up our immune systems, and that's what's starting to come out in the media at this particular point, and those people who are isolated are in a more difficult position because they don't have the normal defenses. God has done wonderful things in the human body to allow us to survive all of this. But I do want you to know we're grateful to
God's done an amazing thing in the body for us to survive this. What about all the people who died? And my understanding is that there were those who were a part of grace who died. Now, there's much speculation. Was it one at the seminary? Was it one in the church? There are reports of people who say things. I've got an article here that we'll look at here in a minute. So let's just make it very clear. It's not like that, hey, God's worked this out so that we can all survive it, because clearly a lot of people have died. So let's try to, again, I just hate the downplaying of it. That's so common within Christianity. Oh, well, it's not that big a deal. I'm not saying it's a hoax, but it's really nothing to worry about. Okay. It's nothing to worry about until we've seen this with some of the conservative talk show hosts who've went on and have died because of COVID. It's like, it's no big deal. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. Then the next thing, I was wrong. Okay. Well, Hey, God's given us a natural immunity that I guess can protect us from this. But if you get it and die, well, then, I guess that natural immunity didn't work for you, right? I mean, can we just try to be, I don't know, somewhat like this is a serious situation? Now, yes, everyone's got to make personal decisions. Everyone's got to figure out what's best. But should people be able to make those decisions, making sure they're being given accurate, careful information? Yes? Hey, there's an outbreak in the church right now. Everyone all the members of the church need to know this. We need to let you know there's an outbreak in the church. We're still going to have services on Sunday. We're still not going to impose social distancing. We're still not going to wear a mask, but we just want everyone to know there's currently an outbreak in the church. There you go. We could argue whether that's right or wrong, but at least that's giving everyone the ability to make an informed decision, right? Everybody's about freedom. Well, if you want that freedom, then give people the freedom to make the decision by giving them the most informed information. Not letting everyone know in August that there was an outbreak in December and January. You know what? That seems a little, that's questionable to me, or maybe more than questionable.
The Lord, we're also grateful to the Lord that the county and the state of California wants to settle this because they do not want a trial. That would not serve them well, since Grace Church has flourished in this entire period of time. I will say this, there's no money coming to Grace Church. There was a statement about $400,000 coming from the county and $400,000 from the state. That goes to the Thomas More Society. They paid all the legal costs. We haven't paid 1 cent for legal fees in all this year and a half, and so that would go to reimburse them, along with another $1 million, I think, that the state of California spent on legal fees. So nothing will come to us except the affirmation that the Lord preserved and protected us through this, and we'll know more about that on Tuesday when the council meets. But it's just an amazing to see the Lord protecting us. And along that line, just a couple of comments. The most vaccinated country in the world is Israel. I think it's as high as 90% vaccination. And they are having a very severe outbreak. And so they've been doing some interesting studies, and one came out yesterday, a very high-level medical study analyzing 800,000 people in this COVID situation. And they came to this conclusion, that if you have only the vaccine and not the natural immunity from COVID, you are 13 times more likely to get COVID asymptomatically, and 27 times more likely to get COVID with symptoms. In other words, the natural immunity that God has designed is the greatest protection. I hope you understand what I said. If you have only the vaccine, you are 27 times more likely to get COVID than if you have the natural immunity. And again, that speaks to the issue from the science side, that God has a way of taking care of us as we love each other and share our germs. So that's an important thing for you to know. There has not been any word from the county at all, county health department, tracing any kind of outbreak to Grace Community Church. We're grateful for that.
There's been no word from the county tracing an outbreak to the church, but if you're not reporting, did you report? Because you clearly, publicly, didn't seem to let anyone know. So you see, the whole thing seems odd. Now, he does quote the Israel study. You can go read about it. Try to read the study for yourself. I got no problem. Let's talk about natural immunity. That's wonderful. That's great. But again, you get natural immunity by getting COVID. The problem is some people, they're not going to develop natural immunity. They're going to die. That's the issue. So again, if people want to get natural immunity, then by all means, let them go wherever they want to go to get COVID. Let them go, and then they stay away from anyone else to spread. Like, that's the thing. If you want to get natural immunity by getting COVID, then you get COVID. You stay at home, right? You stay at home. You deal with it. You deal with it. You deal with it because you chose to get it. So you deal with it. And then if you come out over it, you're fine. The symptoms are gone. You get a test. You're negative. Then by all means, you didn't infect anybody else. You developed your natural immunity. You made the decision for yourself. Wonderful. You didn't want the vaccine. You developed natural immunity. And now you think you're good to go. Fine. Just make sure that people have the informed decision to know, hey, you're coming to church and you may develop natural immunity because we have a COVID outbreak. Let everyone know that, if that's the way you want to do so. And then tell everyone, be responsible, because your next door neighbor, the person you work with, the person at the grocery store, they may not want to develop natural immunity. So you may want to make sure that you don't take your COVID and go spread it to someone else. Again, it's just basic respect and love for people around you. All right. So here is the news story, so that you can. I'm getting all. Okay. All right. I'm getting messages here. So because of course, you're going to immediately look. You can teach the Bible. Very few emails. You talk about something like this, boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, everything's going to go crazy. Right, here we go. This was published on August the 30th at 3 p.m. John MacArthur admits prior church COVID outbreak own illness. On Sunday, John MacArthur acknowledged for the first time that COVID-19 swept through Grace Community Church last winter, a fact he's failed to admit until now, despite evidence reported months ago by the Roy's report. MacArthur also divulged that he and his wife had COVID last December. Before his August the 29th sermon, MacArthur said that many people contracted COVID. It probably went through our church in maybe December or January, he also said. His wife Patricia and I enjoyed our own bout with COVID for about a week and a half time. MacArthur's comments come as his church is preparing to settle a lawsuit Los Angeles County brought over the church's failure to report an outbreak of COVID-19 to health officials in December as required. Remember, so that was the whole point of the lawsuit. The lawsuit was filed by Los Angeles County because they failed to report the outbreak. Well, obviously, then if you didn't report the outbreak, well, then how, again, you see, hey, they can't trace it to us because we didn't report anything. Well, obviously, Los Angeles County felt that there was an outbreak and felt that the church failed to report it. So how did they find out? And there's lots of questions we have here in regards to the whole thing. MacArthur's comments come as his church preparing to settle a lawsuit that Los Angeles County brought over the church's failure to report an outbreak of COVID-19 to health officials in December as required. It was required for them to do so. The Roy's report published exclusive coverage of the outbreak and of MacArthur's weeks-long absence from the pulpit. Let me go here because this is the report that came. When was this reported? I'm going to follow a link here. This is back in January. John MacArthur returns to pulpit after apparent undisclosed illness. John MacArthur has returned to the pulpit at Grace Community Church after about a month-long absence. So a month-long absence. This has it as a month, not 2 weeks, that began in the midst of an alleged COVID-19 outbreak at the church. The 81-year-old pastor apparently is recovering from an illness, but did not specify the nature of the illness. At the beginning of the service Sunday, MacArthur greeted the congregation after struggling to clear his throat and to catch his breath. MacArthur pointed to his chest and said, "It's still there, so you're going to get it. It's in there still, so you're going to get it. You're going to get it later this morning." All right. MacArthur has preached at Grace on December the 20th. That same day, the Roy's Report published accounts that some staff and members at Grace had COVID, but were being pressured by the church not to report their illness to health officials. Remember, this is all what was the controversy back then. That people had it, but they were told, you don't report it. I mean, it seemed like there was a lot of shady things going on here, 2.5 weeks ago, a master's seminary student and member of Grace died after being diagnosed with COVID. Since December the 20th, MacArthur has not been seen and was believed to be ill. A few days prior to last Sunday's service, several people posted pictures on social media showing MacArthur teaching a class at the master's seminary. The church has not responded to the repeated questions about MacArthur's health. When MacArthur did not preach as scheduled on previous Sunday, staff merely said that MacArthur was resting and preparing for the upcoming Shepherds Conference, March the 3rd through the 5th. MacArthur on Sunday did not address why he had been absent before preaching. He simply stated, "It's a little bit rare for me to go several weeks without preaching. It's a little bit painful because I love to minister God's word." Now, that was the controversy then. So you see why people now are like, wait a minute. Now we're in August and now you admit it? Now you admit that there was an outbreak. Now you admit you had it. Why wasn't this being admitted in December and January? See, that's just a reasonable question. Did you report it to the county? Did you report it? Why didn't everyone in the church know that there was an outbreak? There you go. Those are reasonable questions. That's not trying to attack MacArthur. That's not trying to attack that. I think there's something there that's shady and doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't. I would want to do everything in my power to go, hey, listen, well, when it happened here in my little church in the middle of nowhere, hey, look, there was someone in the church on Sunday. They tested Monday positive for COVID. We're shutting everything down for 2 weeks minimum to ensure that nobody else develops any symptoms and that everything is okay. And everyone needs to be aware of this. And that's in a little church in the middle of nowhere, Texas. I mean, that's just basic, like, let everyone know. So let me read this whole paragraph again. I'm going to try to finish this up really quick here. MacArthur's comments come as his church is preparing to settle a lawsuit. Los Angeles County brought over the church's failure to report an outbreak of COVID-19 to health officials in December as required. Now, here's the thing. If his comments now acknowledge there was an outbreak, and if it can be proven they didn't report the outbreak, well, then clearly they were in violation. So now when they get to the whole thing just seems so messed up. It just seems so messed up. The Roy's Report published exclusive coverage of the outbreak and of MacArthur's week-long absence from the pulpit, which until now was attributed to needing rest and to prepare for a conference that wasn't happening for a couple of months. So you missed church on a Sunday to prepare for a conference that's months out. Okay. MacArthur also complained that local media coverage was inaccurate. Last week, the Los Angeles Times reported MacArthur denied the existence of the pandemic last winter, even as the church had multiple outbreaks of church members getting sick and dying. Though MacArthur's statement seemed to acknowledge outbreaks, MacArthur argued Sunday that it couldn't be proven that the people had actually contracted COVID-19 at the church. There's no evidence that can be traced back to Grace in those situations. He said, referring to the sickness and deaths from COVID-19 among those associated with Grace Community Church. However, Los Angeles County Health Order requires places of worship to report public health when at least 3 COVID-19 cases are identified among church staff or congregants within a 2-week period, regardless of where people caught the disease. For months, the church had resisted acknowledging the spread of COVID among its congregants. Multiple members of Grace Community Church told the Roy's Report in December that they feared retribution for discussing the outbreak. A Grace Community Church leader said staff and members were being pressured not to report new COVID-19 cases to the health department. MacArthur was absent from the pulpit December the 27th, 2020, despite being scheduled to preach. That day, Grace Community Church staff, Pastor Tom Patton, said MacArthur was resting, and evening services that day would also be canceled so members could spend more time with their family. The following Sunday, Patton said MacArthur was home preparing for the Shepherds Conference scheduled for months later. Grace Community Church held worship services in person during most of the outbreak, indoors and without requiring masks or social distancing, in defiance of county health measures. A former student at the Master Seminary, which meets on Grace Community Church's campus, told the Roy's report that the school was flagrantly violating its own COVID-19 measures during that time and mocking students who followed them. An older Master Seminary and Grace Community member in his 60s died in January after contracting COVID-19. The Roy's report also reported that another church staff member, Phil Johnson, several attendees of an adult Sunday school class that had been meeting in person, and multiple members of the church's Filipino ministry had COVID during the December outbreak at the church. Meanwhile, MacArthur was out for 3 weekends without further explanation. When he returned to the pulpit January the 17th, he struggled to clear his throat, catch his breath, and said, pointing to his chest, "It's in there still, so you're going to get it later. Later this morning." MacArthur first addressed the outbreak in an April statement to California court. And the statement, MacArthur defended the church's failure to report the outbreak, saying the church wasn't aware at the time that so many people were sick with COVID. That's what he told the court, that they weren't aware that so many people were sick. You just heard him say in the audio clip that in December and January, he became aware of how many people were sick. The whole thing is a train wreck. The Roy's report had previously laid out how his statements to the court strained, basically are called into question. I'll just state it that way. He had since told the LA Times the church could support members. He has since told the LA Times the church could support members who sought religious exemptions from vaccine mandates levied by their employees. So I guess the church will also give people a vaccine, a religious exemption to the vaccine as well, because, why not? I mean, let's do that as well. So there you have it. I don't know what to make out of all of that. There's just a lot of double speak, a lot of, wait, what? And again, I'm just baffled. Why did he get up there and do that in August? Why? Why wouldn't he just get up there and say, hey, the lawsuit, it's about to be settled. It's all good. Let's press on. Thank you for your support. But to come out now and say, hey, no, actually, I knew in December and January that a lot of people were getting sick. Oh, yeah, and I had it too. After he told the court, we didn't report it because we didn't know how many people were sick. So you didn't report it. It seems to be factual. They didn't report, so I don't know how that could be traced back to you. And now he's admitting they knew in December and January, and now it appears that there were a lot of people who got sick, and at least maybe one death, possibly confirmed, maybe more. And there's reports, again, of people claiming that they were pressured. Now, those people need to come on record. Put it this way. The church, actually what needs to happen is the church just needs to be open and honest of what they did and why they did it, and then either apologize or stand by it and justify it. Justify it. Hey, you know what? We believe the county overstepped their boundaries, and therefore we believed that the right course of action, and they can even try to quote scripture if they want, was to not report, not let anyone know. We didn't believe it was their business, so we defied the order. We didn't report it. Yes, there was an outbreak, and no, we didn't tell people. And yes, we didn't tell people that MacArthur was out for COVID because we believed that was the right thing to do because it was going to create problems with this oppressive government. Just come out and say all of that. And then everyone can decide whether that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. Did they do things in a biblical way or an unbiblical way? Do you only tell the truth when you have to, and then you lie when you don't? Do you misrepresent? Do you deceive? When can you do that? That's what everyone will have to decide about the story. So here seems to be the facts. Let's try to summarize it. That yes, in December and January, there was an outbreak of COVID in the church. We don't know exactly how many people got it, but MacArthur became aware of how many people had it. He doesn't give us a number. At that same time, MacArthur had it. His wife got it. MacArthur was out. When he was out, it was clearly stated from the platform, from the pulpit, that he was out for rest and for preparing for the Shepherds Conference. Nothing to do with COVID. They didn't mention COVID. It was never acknowledged that there was an outbreak. It was never acknowledged that MacArthur had it until now. And now Even though at the court, he told the court that they couldn't report it because they didn't know, but now we have him on audio claiming that he knew back in December and January. There's some things there that just doesn't make sense. There's some things there that seem contradictory. Now, you may not think it's a big deal. That's fine. Don't think it's a big deal. I'm not telling you to think it's a big deal. I'm saying, though, if it's okay to lie in this situation, if it's okay to misrepresent, if that's what appears to have happened, then you've got to then justify it for other things as well. Like, where is this relativism? I don't know. I just wish the church would, to me, it would just be better just to come out and say, look, guys, here's what we did. Here's the decision we made. Amongst the elders of Grace Community Church, we decided that the best course of action was defy the government order, don't follow the rules. Even if there's an outbreak, don't let anyone know. Continue on worshiping God because we think that was more important than reporting it, letting people know, and being open and honest with what was going on. And that's the decision we made. And looking back, we now realize that wasn't the most honest way, the way with the most integrity, or we stand by it because we think that was the biblical thing to do to protect us from the oppressive government. Whatever the case may be, just come out and state it. And then everyone can decide good, or everyone can come out and say bad. It's that simple. All right. And you can hear I'm getting all kinds of notifications. All right. Okay. There we go. So not everyone agrees. Not everyone agrees. I guess it seems like most people think that basically MacArthur did the right thing is what I think most are going to say. It looks like that's the majority of people. And then MacArthur did the right thing. So if to me, there's clear misrepresentation there and cover up and deceit to some level. So if that's okay, then hey, when pastors misrepresent or cover up in other areas, can you throw rocks at them? Or is it okay to only misrepresent and cover up in certain situations? See, now we get into a very slippery relativistic game, but it seems like at least most people are believing that what MacArthur did was perfectly justifiable and okay. In fact, in the comments under that one article, a lot of people are like, yay, MacArthur did the right thing. Yay, he's awesome. He's a hero. He stood up. We need more preachers to be like MacArthur. And I'm like, okay, well, if we need more preachers to be like MacArthur, we can have a course on when to deceive and not misrepresent, I guess. What else? How else do you describe what happened? I don't know. But here's the thing. MacArthur's going to be fine. Grace Community Church is going to be fine. They're fine financially. They're fine numerically. Nobody's going to get upset about this. The people who get upset about this are people who already don't like John MacArthur. And MacArthur's going to go on just fine. His followers are going to just like, he's amazing. He's wonderful. He did the right thing. God's blessing us. Look at our numbers and see. Numerical increase means God's happy with us, and numerical decrease means God's not happy with you because, that's how we measure the success of ministry now is based off numbers. That's basically how it's going to go because that's while many of the churches who have defied COVID rules and just absolutely broken them, they say because their numbers have increased, then therefore God's blessing them because that's the way you determine how your ministry is working. When everyone left Jesus, when all those disciples walked away from Jesus, clearly he was failing because, ministry is determined by how many people are coming, not, the more people coming, you're doing it right. The more people leaving, you're doing it. Oh, no, that's not the way it only works when it's your ministry that's getting all the people. Then you're doing something right. Who knows? It's just more of the Christian games that sometimes are played. I know this is controversial, but you can determine, I don't know what to make of it. There's just enough there that just makes me go, come on. They're clearly there wasn't being forthright. They were not definitely being as open and honest and as forthright as they should have been. That's my opinion. Like, again, I'm not going to argue. If you want natural immunity and that's the way you want to get it, then by all means, let everyone at the church know, hey, we're having a get some COVID service tonight. We have an outbreak. I've told everyone with it to come to the church. I have it. Well, I'm going to be at the church. We're all going to meet, act normal. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. If you do, great. You can get natural immunity. If you don't, well, sorry, you don't get the natural immunity. Just do. But if they would never do that in an open, blatant way. They wouldn't, because they know then it would probably turn a lot of public opinion against them. But so they just did it, I guess, we just won't tell anybody. There you have it. newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. All right. Thanks for listening. I'll be back on the air shortly. God bless.